What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that we have been eagerly anticipating because, and honestly, I just don't know what to expect from this band other than lots of heavy riffs and, I guess, fiercely proggy sort of sense and evolution. I don't know. We're going to go over the latest offering from Rivers of Nihil, their self-titled album. This comes out on the 30th of May on Metal Blade Records. This band formed in 2009 in Reading, Pennsylvania. This is their 5th album overall. We actually went over this band's last album, The Work, which was a divisive but solid album. And as I said, this band is kind of like frequently evolving their sound. You go back to their earlier albums, Got to See the Light and Monarchy. Monarchy is where I got into them. Vastly different than where we are right now. Or even like vastly different from the album that followed Monarchy, Where the Owls Know My Name, which was a big breakout album for him. Pretty much, I would say, ushered in the whole trend of saxophones showing up in metal albums. And we were really excited to go over The Work because, well, Where the Owls Know My Name was such a huge album.
I loved it.
I loved the shit out of it, too. I still listen the hell out of it.
Yep.
But The Work was, I don't know, kind of an interesting one. I feel like you could probably describe it as a battlefield album.
Yeah.
Where you had a lot of, like, colliding ideas. You know, maybe not everyone was completely on board. And that kind of showed with how the fans reacted to the album. It was very divisive. And then after a run of touring, which I did catch them on tour with Black Dahlia Murder on that album, which even the fans were kind of meh on. I distinctly remember hearing people booing the band for the new material that they were playing. I was like, man, that's just fucking uncalled for.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't do that. Granted, I was not a big fan of The Work either. It took a little bit of time for that record to actually grow on me, and even so, it's not my favorite by any means. Like, if I'm going to go back to anything in this band, really, it's either going to be Monarchy or Where the Owls Know My Name. So, like, The Work for me, it didn't feel quite as, I don't know, cohesive as some of the other albums. You had a lot of colliding ideas, and it just kind of was smushed together at points, and I was like, eh.
But after that tour, we started seeing some fierce changes in the lineup. One of the big ones was founding member Jake Diefenbach. I'm sorry if I'm screwing up your name. Longtime frontman for the band, ended up exiting, which, I mean, even his presence on The Work, it felt as though that he was kind of being phased out with the direction the band was going. Also, guitarist John Tapor left too. I believe that's how you say his last name. And there was kind of this like whole like limbo period with the band in terms of like, all right, well, are they gonna like, you know, kind of round things out and get it together? And then lo and behold, they got some new members. And the first member that really, really caught my eye was the fact that they got Andy Thomas from Black Crown Initiate, a fellow Reading, Pennsylvania band. And I'll be honest, a band that sounds remarkably similar to Rivers of Nihil. So I saw this as kind of like a seamless transition. The fact that Andy's awesome, clean vocals, I already kind of sensed that they would fit in well with whatever direction this band was going to go in. Plus with Jared Klein, you know, supplying a lot of clean vocals from behind the drum kit, I had a feeling that those two would harmonize really well. And unlike The Work, I feel like this is a way more focused piece. And The Work might have been a victim of its own like conceptual nature. The way the album flowed, it just felt off, but I believe all those songs were deliberately in that order to actually flow with the concept. This, I feel like the songs all flow together very well. And this honestly feels more like the spiritual successor to Where the Owls Know My Name.
Yep, I said the same thing about halfway through this record. I was like, you know what? This should have followed Owls, because of the way this record is set up and the way it is still like more melodic and more proggy in nature. Like, it doesn't feel like it's all cut up into pieces.
Lots of transitional atmosphere between the songs. You get a good balance of ferocious, chuggy riffs. The fact that Adam Biggs is like taking over almost entirely on the harsh vocals, I think he does like a really solid job on here, which was kind of a thing that I was wondering about because I really liked Jake's vocals. Like, he had this very pronounced, intelligible roar, and all of his lyrics were barked with a lot of authority, but Adam does a great job in here, and honestly, he does have a little bit more in the way of a vocal wheelhouse, which vocal dynamics on here, I'll be honest, probably the best they've ever had. And a big part of that is due to Andy Thomas's presence. I mean, if you listen to Black Crown Initiate, you know his soaring cleans are absolutely catchier than hell. But Jared Klein's vocals were also really good, and again, I think those two harmonize really well. And Biggs, again, doing a lot of the harsher vocals. He does low growls, mid-range screams. There's a lot of like really creepy atmospheric whispers in here too. Anything they can do vocally, I would say, to make these songs as dynamic as they are musically, they match it.
Record, of course, opens with the very first single that they released for having Andy Thomas in the band, I guess, Suborbital Blues. I've always loved the chorus of this song anyway. Like, I thought that this song was a perfect way to showcase what Andy was going to bring to the band. If you've heard Black Crown Initiate before, you know, again, that the man can sing. And the Suborbital Blues does a great job of that. Just super catchy. There's great leads on here. It's groovy. And now that they've got a clean vocalist that can complement Jared's cleans, it works really well. Like, I thought that this was a great way to open this record because so much more of that is showcased on this album as well.
Yeah, there's a lot more, like, emotion, I would say, too, like the big choruses on here. And the choruses on this album are absolutely huge when you get down to songs like Water and Time, House of Light. House of Light has the best chorus in the album. It's my favorite one. It has this huge soaring vibe. It feels very triumphant. The melodies behind it, the guitar riffs are very bright. Honestly, the first thing I thought of with just like the vibe of it, it was like a big anthemic Killswitch Engage song, except they went full bore prog. Like, musically, outside of the chorus, it's not a lot like Killswitch at all. But the chorus, it has that vibe. If Jesse Leach actually did a, vocal guest spot on that song, it would totally work. Like, there's nothing that would feel like out of place there. The vibe's the same. And that chorus itself is a big anchor point for a very strange, melodic, but very just kind of like moody song. And that's a good chunk of this material. A lot of this, I wouldn't say is like hugely focused on the death metal aspects. A lot of this is way more focused on the prog. It's a little bit slower and groovier, lots of jazz fusion elements. Personally, I think this is one of like Jared Klein's best drum performances. Like, this is a flat-out clinic on here.
Yep. Not only does he do typical things that he normally does, like blast beats, songs like Dustman and Evidence, which are notably more heavy songs. There are a lot of places where he also incorporates things like these really cool tribal grooves, and they're not normal tribal grooves. I mean, of course you get some tom work, but he places tom accents in like different places, which makes it really kind of groovy. Songs like Despair Church and The Logical End reminds me a lot of like Between the Buried and Me type drum work going on, which is pretty neat.
Despair Church in particular has something to do with like these syncopated, like heavy staccato riffs, and I mean, it's almost like an elongated turnover. It's a flat-out turnover that he just keeps kind of like circling back around. It has like an old, like, destroy, erase, improve sort of vibe to it. And that song is packed full of just really interesting dynamics. You get this big, sliding, menacing riff on what initially I thought was the chorus. I don't know, it might be the chorus. These songs aren't necessarily structured around like verse chorus, but occasionally they are. I know, it's confusing, but it's prog metal. Prog metal does whatever the hell it wants. But you have like these really interesting transitions into like kind of like spooky, whimsical territory.
Kind of.
There's this whole bit where it kind of shrinks back down and you have this like fun vocal cadence on top, and it's kind of like, I don't know, like a haunted house, but like not like a super scary one. It's like one that there could be like a musical to. I don't want to say Disney because I feel like that's a dig.
How about Sesame Street?
That's a worse dig.
Oh, well, shit.
But it transitions out of that into a saxophone solo, which, yes, the sax is back. All the sexual healing this band could ever, muster up is once again here on at least 4 tracks. But again, the sax, I think, is used, pretty cleverly. It's mostly used as a lead instrument. Occasionally you get moments where it does harmonize with the guitars a little bit more. House of Light in particular, it kind of blends in a little bit rather than standing out for a solo. But I like the whole lead trade-offs. I've liked it since, The Silent Life. As soon as that breakdown came in and I went, holy shit, is that a saxophone? Who okayed that? That's not metal. I know maybe it is metal now. I don't know. But as divisive as the whole sax thing is with this band, because I know some people that absolutely hate it, I like the fact that they have stuck with it and they still find clever ways to employ it in the music. But it doesn't feel cheesy. It doesn't feel like it's just like, there for a campy effect. It feels like, it serves the song much like everything else on here. Whether it's the more proggy flourishes that you will hear on Water and Time, House of Light, The Logical End, or some of the more savage moments on here like Dustman, Evidence, and American Death. American Death. Holy shit, you could have convinced me that that song was a Fear Factory song off of Demanufacture that never got released. That song is plain chuggy and vicious.
Dustman too. Lots of broken up, syncopated start-stop riffs, much like Fear Factory. That's kind of what this band does throughout this record when it does get heavy. Like, there's only a couple moments I would actually say that had actual breakdowns in them. Dustman and The Logical End both had breakdowns, but really, when they decide to chug, it's mostly just like those staccato start-stop things like Fear Factory does.
Again, that's something I liked about this band initially, that they were able to just craft songs that are outright brutal, but also, again, atmospheric and clever in terms of the riff writing. And atmospheric is definitely a big thing on here. This album is lush. The production is huge. I would say maybe probably the biggest production they've had, considering how much is going on, like all the vocal layerings. There's frequently synths, or at least like an atmospheric hum in the background of all these songs. And a frequent thing on this album are, kind of like longer outros, like they'll draw out the end of the song and use it as a transitional atmosphere into the next song. You have moments where there are strings and pianos. Sometimes it's just like some ambient synths, or, like a repeated refrain that kind of gets muffled into the darkness. But it keeps the album flowing. Though I will say, at points it does kind of like draw out those parts a little bit much. Like, I get having it there for effect, but Despair Church in particular has about like 2 minutes of outro, music, which, it's a pleasant string and piano melody, but at the same time, I feel like it could have like faded out a little bit sooner. And I will say that some songs, I feel like they might have been like a little too big, or they wanted to make them a little bit bigger than they rightfully should have. Like Evidence. Evidence comes out absolutely swinging after you get past all these skittering noises and such that sets it up. It is one of the most aggressive songs of the album. It's blasty, it's mean, it's got a vicious nature to it, but it does try to throw in clean vocals where I just don't feel like they belonged as much. Like, not every song on here necessarily needed them. Granted, where they showed up, I think for the most part they were absolutely awesome. But this was one song in particular that I think just needed to be heavy and vicious.
Yeah.
And, it works well as a 1-2 punch with American Death, which, while it does have a big clean chorus, it stays pretty like locked onto that double time monstrous chuggy groove, like big spheres of madness sort of vibes too. Like, you just kind of headbang and lock onto that. But Evidence in particular, I don't know, there's a couple of moments in there where I feel like the clean vocals just didn't sit as well. Like, they were just kind of thrown out there.
And it's not to say they're bad either. I don't think any time the clean choruses appear in this album in particular, I don't think at any time they're performed poorly. Like, no. It's still good. I just think on Evidence, much like Nick said, that song is brutal from the get-go. And again, I'm not saying that it was bad. I'm not saying it was performed poorly. It just didn't need it. And then you have the last track, Rivers of Nihil, by the band Rivers of Nihil, on the album Rivers of Nihil, that starts out mostly instrumental. Like, initially I thought it was going to be a fully instrumental track. Very proggy, strings, you get drum and bass groove, like, it sets up really well. When the vocals come in, it is really, really close to both Cynic and Alice in Chains, like, especially in the vocal harmonies.
I did think it was interesting that Andy was kind of doing like the more like Jerry Cantrell-ish vocals on there, because, I mean, generally his vocals are huge and soaring, but Jared can also hit that too. So, I don't know, I feel like Jared was doing the higher part. I could be wrong there. Their voices are very similar, but they come together so beautifully. But I kind of figured it was going to kind of like fade out on that. It'd be like the soft kind of like outro song, like you've been through this huge riff storm of an album, and this was like the, slow exhale, and then out of nowhere it just gets brutal as shit. Back to like being, just chuggy, heavy. Biggs comes in, growls his guts out. It's a pretty interesting track to close it out, but at the same time, it is like the shortest track in here, and it kind of feels like an afterthought. Like, this was like kind of like the leftover stuff that they didn't want to like discard because there are good ideas on there, but it just didn't fully flesh out to be like, I don't know, like a legit song.
Well, because after it gets brutal and heavy, it doesn't go anywhere. It just stops. And so to me, it kind of seemed like an incomplete thought. Like, again, like maybe they just threw something in there. I don't know. But I feel like also for the title track, too, that should be this big, epic moment. Because everything at this point has led up to this. And all the twists and turns that this song takes to get really heavy and brutal and then to just end, I was like, well, hold on.
This was probably the low moment on here where it did remind me of the work, because there were tracks like that on the work too that I just thought were, you know, and not fully fleshed out. But the rest of this, I think, is absolutely awesome. And I would say up there with their strongest albums. Granted, they only have 5 albums. This band still has probably a lot more growing to do, because they seem like they grow with each album. Like, this band's discography, in a way, kind of runs like Death's or Carcass's, where, again, each album is different. Each one is a progression from the next one, or at least a change from the next one. And for the most part, I think they do a great job of, like, you know, pushing themselves creatively and coming up with, like, solid new albums that have, you know, something that adds to their, you know, overall legacy. So overall, I'm gonna give this 4 stars. And honestly, it's kind of close to that 4.5 mark. Like, I really enjoyed these songs. They found, you know, just a good balance of kind of everything that they've done in the past, like the flat out brutal stuff, the more melodic, more proggy stuff. And again, Andy Thomas's presence on here is 100% felt. The choruses in here are rich. They're huge. You get, like, legit sing-alongs on here. Like, I know I'm going to be singing along with a lot of these. Again, House of Light. Holy shit, what a fucking chorus. Solid riff work. The drum performance on here is amazing. I do feel like it kind of gets a little too, like, self-indulgent in terms of, like, transitional atmosphere occasionally. But overall, it doesn't really hamper this that much. If you're a longtime fan of this band, I'm pretty sure you're going to dig this. If you're a big fan of Black Crown Initiate, I can't imagine you wouldn't dig this either. And in terms of other comparisons, it's kind of hard to say, because this is kind of like an area of progressive death metal that is still relatively young. But, I mean, there's definitely stuff in here that reminds me of Cynic, Atheist, you know, a little bit of Gore Guts here and there, and yeah, even a little bit of Fear Factory and Meshuggah. If any of that sounds good to you, strongly recommend checking this one out. And yeah, looking forward to catching these guys live again sometime.
Yeah, no shit. I'm going to go ahead and fully agree. I'm going to give this a good, solid, strong 4. I agree with Nick. It does have 4.5 star potential because of just how catchy this album is. I'm sure we'll sing along to most of these songs. I'm a giant Andy Thomas fan and his cleans anyway. So, you know that when a chorus is sang, it's powerful and you're going to sing right along to it whether you want to or not. I think that this is a great offering from this band. This kind of takes what I thought was lacking in the work and puts it all together. This album is definitely more cohesive. It flows a lot better. The songs seem focused. It's more intense overall. Like, they are back to being really fucking heavy. Packed full of sick riffs, sick grooves, awesome drum performance. The vocal play on here between the growls and the cleans is really wonderful. While some of the songs share the same kind of vibe, like Water and Time and House and Light, the songs themselves seem to have kind of their own identity to them, which is really cool. Well, I will say that there are certain atmospheric moments that do tend to drag out a little bit. They're usually towards the end of the song, and I didn't find the atmosphere in the songs themselves to be overly intrusive. There are a lot of layers, but it is done really well to make the songs flow. Yeah, just overall, I found this to be a really awesome record. If you've been a fan of this band for a long time, and you were kind of, I don't know, disenchanted by the work, I would say give this a shot. This is, I think, what should have been after Where the Owls Know My Name. This is a pretty solid record. So yeah, if you're a fan of this band, or bands again like Cynic and Atheist, definitely some Fear Factory, it's in there for sure. You're going to want to check this out. I would strongly recommend it.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only live stream, which we are going to do one probably here, I don't know, at some point. We're trying to organize a time to get the rest of the guys together that we were hanging out with at MDF to do a whole recap. But we'll do a flat-out member stream, and we'll definitely talk about MDF, because holy shit, it was fun.
Yes, it was.
Minus getting my hoof burned, but that's a separate story. But memberships is still the main way to support the channel. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our hats and shirts. That is linked down below. And there's a join button down there if you'd like to become a member and hang out with us in live streams, which sounds super exciting.
It is super exciting. Or maybe it's not. I don't know how you feel about our live streams. Even if you don't join, it's cool. We have non-member live streams. Tons of stuff coming your way. Album reviews, discography rankings. We do have At the Gates coming up next, which we are going to buckle down to now that we are past MDF, which was a blast. We have a new segment that works in tandem with the discography rankings called Thralls Greatest Hits that we've been trying to do. We think you guys are going to love. You seem to love the one we did with Death. Beyond that, we got States of Metal, Is It Metal, Is It Not Metal, Nick's Never-Ending Collection updates, just tons of content all the time. We do it all for you guys because we appreciate you being here. Thank you for being a part of this channel.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.